Hello everybody, I'm Jim Durrett, Mayor of Montgomery County, and this is another one of our series of shining the spotlight on where it needs to be shown in Montgomery County. So many times the mayor's office gets a lot of credit, but credit we don't deserve. So we want to bring awareness to the people that make Montgomery County just a great place that it is to live, work, and play. And today, I have the distinct honor of interviewing our Director of Animal Control, Mr. Dave Kaske. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing good, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, so I call him Super Dave a lot. So if I call you Super Dave during this interview, forgive me. But so Dave, let's start off. Just tell us a little bit about Dave.
Okay.
You're not a native of Montgomery County.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town up in northern Illinois, just outside of Chicago, called Belvedere, Illinois. Moved from there to Rockford, Illinois, which is probably the second or third largest city in Illinois. Was in public safety most of my career, and got into animal control about 8 years ago, and with Winnebago County Animal Control up in northern Illinois, and was there 6 years as the deputy director. And we decided that me and my wife Sherry, we decided that the winters were just too cold anymore, so we looked for something farther south, and this just happened to come open, and I applied for it and came here, and the rest is history.
Here we are.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
My mom, she's actually an immigrant from Italy. She moved here in 1962 and met my dad and had me and my brother, and he's a little bit older than me. He's still up in Illinois with my mom.
So what started that path with animal control?
Actually, being in public safety for 25 years, I just kind of got to the point where I was tired of dealing with people every day,
Yeah,
and all the issues, and decided to kind of went off on my own doing contract security for a while, and then just that happened to come open. They were looking for a deputy director. I thought I'd give it a try. I had the supervisory experience, and I just absolutely fell in love with it, working with the animals. I actually felt like I was making a difference. I know a lot of times in public safety, sometimes you just don't feel like as much work as you do is that you're making a difference in the community, but we could actually see the difference we were making, and that's how I feel here, is we just absolutely see the difference we're making in the community with the animals and educating people.
and so a lot of people, Dave, probably don't realize, but there's a lot of people that have been in the enforcement side of things that have moved over to animal control, because it is an enforcement aspect of animal care and control.
Yeah, we see it here. We've actually had people come from other law enforcement agencies over to animal control. It's kind of a smooth transition. They're already used to doing the enforcement. They already have the people skills and communicating with the public, and they are kind of seeing the same thing, where they're not seeing a difference in what they're doing, but they do here with working with the animals.
So you, as well as a couple other people that we've done this process with, I've been fortunate enough to have been in the interview process with some of our department heads, and through our process of 3 or 4 of us interviewing you, we were lucky enough to hire you.
Yeah.
And that was when?
That was actually February of 2018. Yeah.
And when you moved here, you kind of came in on the front side of this housing crisis, didn't you? I mean, you had a really hard time finding a house in Montgomery County, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, so I came, me and my wife, we were actually living in our RV out at Exit 1 at the Clarksville RV campgrounds, and Nancy and her husband out there, they were just awesome and welcoming us. But yeah, I was actually here a couple months before my wife, because she works for FedEx, so she was waiting to transfer here, and we were looking at houses both virtually and going to look at houses almost every weekend, and I think it took us almost 10 months before we actually found a house. And we were actually in Gatlinburg, and our realtor found us a house, and she said, well, it's coming on the market tomorrow, I can go do a virtual tour. So we actually did a virtual tour with a realtor and put in our offer while we were in Gatlinburg. We actually hadn't even been in the house yet, so.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, that's great. Dave, talk about some significant accomplishments or improvements that you feel like that you made in animal care and control?
I think some of the biggest accomplishments we've made down there is reducing our owner surrenders. I know that was a big issue when I first got here. Is the stories along lines at the shelter after a weekend. We've really reduced our owner surrenders down there. We've implemented a fee structure, and also not just the fees and doing by appointment, but we've also educated the staff on trying to educate the owners on finding other places where they can find people that would take their pets that they could no longer keep, which would be reaching out to rescues, families, friends, coworkers, and rehoming those animals before they come to the shelter. I think the other big accomplishment we made is we started microchipping pets down at the shelter in 2018. Since then, we've microchipped almost 4,000 pets that have been reclaimed or adopted through the shelter. That helps when we pick up an animal out in the field, returning them back to the owner so they don't have to come to the shelter. Or at least if they do come back to the shelter, we have a means to contact the owner and reunite the pet with the family. And I think the biggest accomplishment we've made is when I first arrived, everybody on the team was on board with trying to get to be a no-kill shelter. When we first got here, our save rate was probably around 62%. This past year we were at 88%. We're trying to reach 90%, which is the goal to become a no-kill shelter. So I think that's probably our biggest accomplishment is we've increased our live save rate down there.
Yeah, you're gonna get to 90%.
We're gonna get there, yes we are.
Yeah. Dave, I don't know if a lot of people know, a lot of people maybe think, and you've talked about some of these things, but they think about animal control, they think about, well, there's a dog running around in my neighborhood that doesn't have a collar on it. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna call animal control, they're gonna come get it. But I mean, we have so many people that really think they wanna be pet owners, mm-hmm. but they're not pet owners. Part of our community, and we've talked about this with a lot of people, it's an absolute blessing to have Fort Campbell here, but a lot of single soldiers will get deployed, or some soldiers and their families will get deployed and they've got to go overseas or something, and they have a pet. I'm not saying they're not responsible pet owners, but it's just not in the cards to take that pet.
Right. And
so we have a lot of owner surrenders. I mean, we have a lot of people that come down there. I think you told me today, we were in a budget hearing today, yes. And I think you were talking today in there that your owner surrenders, you do it by appointments, but mm-hmm. it's about a month backlog in that.
It is, and the last 2 years of just with the pandemic have been crazy, and in meeting with other shelter directors and other facilities, I think we started talking about this at the front side of the pandemic was our adoptions really increased during the pandemic because everyone was at home. People thought it was a great idea to adopt a pet because, well, I'm home now every day, I can have a pet. But since the pandemic's kind of started to fizzle out, now we've seen our owner surrenders increase, and it's almost been twofold from prior pandemic. But a lot of that is people going back to work; they're not able to keep those pets any longer. The veterinary clinics are seeing the same thing because during the pandemic, people were home and they were starting to notice things that they didn't normally notice because they weren't home when the dog was or cat was acting a certain way. But yeah, with the military being here, and I think it just being a transient community where you have people moving in, moving back mm-hmm. out of the community, we're seeing a lot of those owner surrenders just because, and with the way the housing market is here right now, people are renting. It's hard to keep a dog in a yard that isn't fenced in, or they're not taking the proper measures to secure the dog while it's outside.
Yeah. Y'all's volume is huge too, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this past year we took in almost 4,000 animals. We're on track probably to do
that. Ain't all dogs and cats.
No, that's not all dogs and cats. As I was mentioning, when we walked in, we had a turkey come in over the weekend, and we get ferrets. We have a rat that came in that apparently came in through the UPS store that must have fell out of somebody's shipment box or something. But it was a pet rat. It wasn't a rodent type rat. But yeah, we get everything down there. And so we've had snakes and. Yeah, but we're on track probably to have a lot more intakes this year than we did last year.
But your calls for service are really, really big too.
Yeah, we had 5,200 calls for service. That doesn't include, so those calls for service are initial calls. That doesn't include where we have to go back to a residence and follow up. That number, obviously drastically increases. We had 29,000 incoming phone calls last year just at the shelter, answering questions about, pet ownership, adoptions, people asking about surrendering their pets and calling in complaints.
Yeah. And Dave, I think another big part of what y'all do is just your collaboration with other shelters and with rescues and stuff. I mean, there's so many people out there that have a passion for animals.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really been one of the things that I've been so impressed with what y'all have done is your involvement with all these different other agencies, and that truly helps reduce your euthanasia rate. Because I mean, if you get to the point you've got all your kennels full and all that, I mean, unfortunately, you've got to start selecting animals that you're going to have to put down, and that's truly sad. I'm a pet lover. I've had dogs all my life, and but that's got to be tough for y'all. And let me say this, and I want you to respond to it, because you do everything in your power not to have to do that.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that is the absolute last resort.
That is the absolute last resort, and it is frustrating for the staff because, from time to time, and it's a lot less now than what it used to be, but, a lot of people think that because we're not a no-kill shelter, that if an animal ends up there, it's just gonna end up being euthanized. That's not the case. The staff take all of that very personally. They're there because they love the animals. They want to see every animal end up in a home at some point in its life. There's some dogs and cats that's just not possible with due to aggressive behavior or because of their bite history. But any animal that's able to go into a home, we work very hard to find it a home, whether it be through a rescue or adopting out through the shelter. Brenda and her team down there, they work so hard in reaching out to rescues and working with other shelters. I reach out to other shelters in Middle Tennessee and moving animals in and out of the shelter. I shouldn't say in, but out of the shelter.
Right.
But Brenda and her team, they work so hard in reaching out to these rescues, and we actually have a transport going out tomorrow, going into Nashville, and but they work so hard in getting these animals out to these rescues as far north as Cincinnati, Ohio, and Chicago to, right here in Middle Tennessee. But we have such a great relationship with all these other municipal shelters and humane societies throughout Tennessee that we're able to text somebody or call somebody at any time of the day, say, hey, we have this type of dog, we can't do anything with it, or nobody wants to adopt it, are you interested? And 9 times out of 10, somebody will reach out to us and say, yeah, absolutely, we have the room, we'll take it.
Yeah. Well, and I know y'all do the same thing. I know during the floods in Waverly, y'all provided assistance down there.
Yeah, we provided assistance during that time. If we have the space and we're able to provide assistance to other communities, we've done that from time to time. We've actually loaned out our adoption trailer. We offered it during the Waverly incident, in the flood or the tornado in Nashville last year. We actually loaned our adoption trailer out to Nashville Humane to house animals that they didn't have room for.
So I think in your kennel, you have 48 kennels?
We have 48 big dog kennels. We have approximately 26 like puppy or smaller kennels, and then about 90 cat cages.
So, but in those dog kennels, I want people to realize that if that thing's full, and just say it's 60 dogs, y'all try to get every one of those dogs outside every day.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like if somebody brings an animal down there, we don't put it in a cage till we adopt it. I mean, you try to treat it as much like you would if the animal was at your house.
So every day, every dog in that in the shelter goes outside every single day, unless it's a dog that's there on a bite quarantine or severely aggressive. Then it has to stay in the kennel. But even if it's aggressive, we make every effort to get it outside, to get it exercise. All of our dogs are walked every day outside. We have volunteers that come in also throughout the day that walks animals. Our kennel workers are repeatedly walking animals throughout the day, especially those animals that we see that need a little more socialization. They'll make a little more effort to get them extra walks throughout the day. do other enrichment. They'll take them out, play with them, give them certain types of toys to stimulate them throughout the day. But yeah, we don't like the idea of the animal sitting in that kennel all day long. So
I mean, almost every animal that comes in that clinic, somebody or that facility, somebody falls in love with that animal.
I'm guilty of it. I think pretty much every staff member there is guilty of taking an animal home. So it's extremely hard, especially when they're coming in over the counter. There's been some really sad situations on owner surrenders where, you know, people have surrendered and that's just their absolutely last resort. It's sad seeing that situation when they have made every effort to rehome it or to change the situation they're in, and it's especially hard when they have the children with and they don't want to see that dog going into the shelter, and you know, and the dog's placed in the kennel and it's looking for its owner. It's hard for the staff, and you know, we have to see that every day, and it's hard not to fall in love with, you know, every dog that's there. So. And cats. I mean, the cats are great.
And I think one of the things I'm really trying to portray, and I think you're doing an awesome job of it, is if somebody has a pet and if somebody gets to the point they can't care for it, if there's something that's happened in their life that they have to move or whatever, and they have to get it's not that animal's last stop. We do everything in our power to make it.
It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know, our cat adoptions have just gone up tremendously, and you know, we actually have a volunteer, Miss Kathy, comes in every single day and she works with our cats, and she tries to get every cat out and allow it to stretch its legs in our cat room, and our staff is always in there doing enrichment with the cats, and it's nice to see when I first got there. I think a lot of the staff wanted to see some things change to make the cat rooms a little more quiet and peaceful. Now when you go in there, there's, you know, you can hear birds chirping, and it's kind of a serene environment when you go in our cat rooms.
Yeah, we've talked about, and I think I've asked you like 2 of these questions, but I'll get to them in a minute. But we talked about Fort Campbell and some of the challenges that it brings. But I think one of the things I know you're proud of it, I'm certainly proud of it, is we have one of the first intergovernmental service agreements with Fort Campbell, Army-wide. And that's where the Army said, hey, is there a local government that could do something for you? So y'all actually do animal care and control on Fort Campbell.
Yeah, actually, that was probably the proudest moment I've had in the short time I've been here. Was I know when I first got here, there was a talk about going into this agreement with Fort Campbell. I think we waited here when I first got here to let me get my feet wet a little bit, and when we reapproached it the following year, I think there was a lot of people that were skeptical of that agreement.
A lot of commissioners were.
A lot of commissioners were. I think people were worried that our intake at the main shelter would go up and our euthanasia rate would go up. And when I really saw the facility and met with the Fort Campbell public works staff and talked with them, I felt confident this was something that was going to be beneficial for us, because I saw a place where if we got full, just due to their low intake that they have there, that we could utilize that facility and that staff to help our main facility. And since we started that, we haven't had any issues out there. They've been extremely happy with us. I mean, they actually check in with us once a month. How are things going? Do you guys need anything? If we have any issues at the stray facility out there, all we do is send an email and it's fixed in a matter of a week.
But there's been truly some really great relationships that have been built out of it too, because y'all's relationship with Public Works out there, even with the MPs and stuff, and then with their vet clinic there. I mean, and it's really everybody's working as a team, but they're all different agencies.
So I mean, we work closely with the military police, the CID out there, the Emergency Communication Center, their police department, the Fort Campbell Vet Center, the Vet Mobility Unit. They actually periodically take some of our animals that are adoptable out there at Fort Campbell, and they actually take them out the field and do spay and neuter surgeries for their training, which provides a service to us free of charge. The Vet Center has just been awesome out on Fort Campbell. They share information with us on animals that are adopted, we make sure that all the adopters have all the information they need on Fort Campbell to provide that to the vet center, because they have their own camera regulations out there that they have to follow. But the staff out there, they just have such a tremendous relationship with the Fort Campbell community. I know that community out there was kind of skeptical when we first came on board, but when they seen what we were about and what our mission was, it turned around in a matter of a few weeks, and we were getting so much positive feedback. It's been awesome, and it's helped us out at the main shelter. I couldn't count on both hands how many times it's really bailed out our main shelter when we've been full. So.
Yeah. What's a typical day look like for Dave?
Well, first and foremost, Dave's gotta have coffee in the morning, so to be able to function. I think the staff will attest to that. I think most of the pictures they have of me down there, I have a coffee mug in my hand. So usually it's my morning coffee, and then coming in and just checking in with my management team and the staff to see how everybody's doing, where we're at that day. I try to go through our reports and incidents from the previous day to see what kind of calls that the officers are looking at. My field supervisor, Emily Goodfield, she's on top of those things, so usually if it's something I need to know about, I already know about it before I even get to work. And then just going through the daily reports, citations, reviewing our shelter inventory and seeing where we're at on a daily basis, and then working on things like the budget and just making sure that everybody in the shelter has what they need. I know they said one of the previous things that they didn't see that they like to see is somebody that walks through the shelter management team. So I try to get through the shelter all day long, intermingle with the staff, and check on the animals. And
it's a pretty tight-knit bunch, isn't it?
It is a very tight-knit bunch. They work so closely together every day, and I think just the general working with the animals and having that compassion, I think, brings everyone closer together, because you all have a common interest of wanting to see those animals get homes and getting attached to the animals. That's something that I think everybody has a hard time not doing down there. So.
Well, I just think it's, whether it's you're dealing with a dog that maybe, and we could talk for 2 hours about the dangerous dogs and how we handle those, but dealing with them or dealing with one that's in the shelter, I mean, it's not that black and white long-haired dog, or it's not that, I don't want to put this, I don't want to, like pit bull, because a lot of people see that breed as not being a good breed, but that gray pit bull or whatever, they all got names.
Yes.
I mean, when y'all talk about them, y'all talk about them by name.
Yeah, I mean, the one common phrase we do have down there when people kind of question what our mission is or what we're doing is we try to convey to people, listen, every animal that comes into that shelter had a home at some point. It had an owner at some point. It just didn't appear out of nowhere. So that's how we address all the animals, is by their names. They're not a number to us. Yeah, they're assigned a number by a computer, but they all have names, and that's what we know them by. So when the staff and management's talking throughout the day, and we say, well, Rocco's in the back, we know who Rocco is. We don't know him by his number. We know him by his name and what he looks like.
Yeah.
So
that is so awesome.
Yeah,
that is really.
It's if I had to 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known my dream job was, and this would be it. I mean, it's been wonderful being here, and we love the community, and it's just I think one of the first things when I came here for my in-person interview, and me and my wife, we went on a tour of the community. I think just about every place we stopped and kind of said where we were from, nobody had anything negative to say about the community, and that's what struck me as wanting to be here, is everyone was just so proud of the community and had nothing but great things to say. Yeah.
Awesome. Unfortunately, I know the answer to both of these questions, but talk about some short-term and long-term challenges for animal care and control.
Well, I mean, the biggest short-term challenge we're facing right now is just capacity. Our shelter is, I know it was redesigned back in 2007, but unfortunately, I think when they did it then, it wasn't on scope with what the optimal shelter environment was. So the shelter's really getting to the point now where we're having a lot of structural issues, a lot of space and capacity issues. I mean, we're pretty much full just about every day. It's really a chess game that we're playing down there every day. It's one animal, two animals getting adopted and arranging to get them to the vet, while 3 animals are coming in and finding space for those animals. And it's a challenge. It's very hard on the staff. I know we think about the animals being at capacity, but it's the staff really that's working hard to, well, I can move this dog over here and make room for these 2 dogs, and I can put this one in a little bit smaller kennel to make room for these 2 dogs coming in. And it's very stressful for the staff, and I don't think a lot of people know that kind of stress where, the staff are coming to me or they're coming to Brenda or Emily and say, we're really concerned, we're going into the weekend and we're full, and they're actually very stressed out about, worrying about, are we gonna have to euthanize this animal that, even though he's not adoptable, he's got a home until we can figure out something for him. So it's stressful, but when we figure that out and we're able to move those chess pieces around, it's rewarding to see that, hey, nothing bad happened today.
Right.
We're able to find every animal space.
So that's kind of long-term and short-term.
Yeah. I think our biggest long-term challenge, I think, is getting to the point where we're able to spay and neuter animals in-house and starting our own TNR program, which is trap, neuter, and release stray cats in the community. I think that's one of our biggest goals, is to start a dedicated TNR program where we're actively trapping stray cats in the community, bringing them back to the shelter, fixing them, and then releasing them. Because over time, it does reduce the number of cats in the community, which I think is.
We may have took a step in that direction.
I think we did today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I know those are all kind of short and long-term goals, but I think the biggest goal we have is just getting into a new shelter.
Yeah. You've said this word, I don't know how many times, but volunteers.
Yeah.
I mean, that just, you talk about the lady that comes in and takes care of the cats.
Yeah, it's
even when you're full, I mean, y'all can reach out and say, hey, will you foster Rocco or whoever for 3 days?
Yeah,
Help us. I mean, and the community really.
We have, I can't say enough about the community here and how supportive they are, not just of us, but of the animals. There are some people that are very passionate about animals here, and it's not hard for us to at least reach out if we have an animal and say, hey, we need somebody to foster, this dog or this cat, and we always have people that step up and do it. We may not have a lot of volunteers in the building, day to day, but we have a lot of volunteers out in the community that step up at any given time to hold on to a stray animal for us, because we may be full that day, or because it's after hours and the officers aren't able to come out, or it's a dog that came in that just needs someplace to go for 5 days because it just had a surgery. So
Yeah. Dave, the enforcement side, I won't talk a lot about it, but that's a hard part of it too. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that they see a stray dog that doesn't have a collar or something, and they think that you can take it down the shelter, turn it in, and then they could take that dog back home or whatever, or they just call the shelter. But I mean, so many of those cases, that's somebody's property, and that's the law says that it's somebody's property.
Right, and I think that's, I think what a lot of the community has a hard time with is that animals are seen as property here. It wouldn't be any different than it was somebody's television or something else, is that that's somebody's property. And, as I said before, all pets have an owner at some point. So we do have, people I think might get upset sometimes when they bring us a pet and down to the shelter, and we say, okay, we take it in. I think they might have the misconception of, well, I brought it down to the shelter to have it scanned, I can take it back home and keep it now. But we have to hold that animal by law for a certain period of time to allow that owner to come down to the shelter to see if their pet's there. We do have a lot of pet owners that call daily looking for their lost pet, or they come down to the shelter. So if the pet's not there for them to visually make identification with, it's hard to get those pets back home if they're scattered about the community.
Yeah. Microchipping is important to that.
It's huge. We have so many people that don't really understand the microchipping aspect yet, because when we adopt an animal or we send it back home with a reclaim, it's required to be microchipped. We have some people that don't really like the idea of having the microchip implanted, but once we explain what the benefits